Hi, this is Stephanie Miller from The Stephanie Miller Show. Please enjoy this exclusive clip from my show on Political Voices Network.
The guy who has never, ever been at the top of anybody's game, according to Donald Trump, kicked his ass last time.
Yes.
So you were beaten by a guy who you say is slow, can't finish the sentence, and never left his basement. So what does that say about you? Secondly, Xi and Putin are both, and I can say this with a depth of understanding that even Trump, as president for 4 years, can't seem to grasp, are both morons. Peter Principle, and in the case of Xi, got him to the top. He was a princeling under the Communist Party because of his dad's position. The general belief system in China is that he is illiterate and an idiot, and you could actually trace China's collapsing economy to the single piece of policy that he actually came up with himself with his finance minister, which is the 3 red lines. You can't blame all of China's problems on Xi because he came in when they were already, the fuse had already been lit on their demographics problem, and they had already had issues that were going to eventually drive away the West as far as how much slave labor we will put up with. That was already kind of he jacked it up, certainly, but that was big. The 3 red lines about how much debt mortgage companies and banks can have, that his decision to just make that a rubber stamp with no gray area, just like a red light, yellow light, green light kind of situation, wrecked their economy. China's economy, first of all, let me be abundantly clear. China's economy is not 18 trillion. It's probably somewhere around 7 trillion. China's population is not 1.4 billion. China's population is probably closer to 800 million, if not less. So, and it's going down. So the idea that Xi Jinping has masterfully articulated a growth point in China when they have 26% youth unemployment in China right now. They have 56% urban unemployment. The general unemployment across the entirety of China is spiked by half the working age people in cities don't have a job. Never mind the impoverished rural areas.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare. And Xi has done nothing but make it worse the entire time he's been there. Putin, obviously, tough guy with the greatest military. Well, I'm sorry. Number 2 actually turned out to be descriptive as well as singular in terms of that. And the acumen of Vladimir Putin as the leader has been completely undermined by everything that has happened during the Ukraine invasion.
It's humiliating.
The 6-day war, 16 months later.
Yeah. It's humiliated him, and it's also united NATO in a way that we haven't seen in years, and that was one of the things that he had Trump in office to do for him. That was Trump's mission.
I've said many times, the only thing dumber than magic on television is ventriloquism on the radio. And Trump is one of those people who would sit next to you listening to, Charlie McCarthy going, I can't even see his lips move on the radio. You know what I mean? Like, he's that kind of, he would watch a David Copperfield special and go, he's really flying. And not recognize that, live it's impressive because they got to hide a lot of stuff. But on TV, we can fix anything, stupid.
Yeah, do it in post.
It's exactly. And you can argue that that's how he views everything, that it's all about reputation. He hasn't updated his belief in the reputation of Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin since before he was president, when he barely started to care.
Well, he had nothing else to go on, and those were Vladimir Putin he wanted to be a Vladimir Putin because he just saw money. He saw dollar signs. That's what he saw from Vladimir Putin.
Well, who he thinks is the white Kim Jong-un. That's why he wants to be Putin. He really wants to be Kim Jong-un because Kim Jong-un has this kind of everybody walks in lockstep. He rules with an iron fist. And were this the 1400s, Trump would have been deposed as a king of of Trump. Ishtan in 14 weeks after he turned 18 years old, because Fred would have handed over the keys, and all of Trump's economic mistakes would have been material and military, and he'd have been dead by now. I mean, that's because he's so dumb and such a mark that the next big kingdom, which would have been Russia in this case, would have just said, "Oh, okay, I'll take that."
Yeah,
which is what they were trying to do. Look at the Gal Love thing, like we were talking about.
Right.
That happened, because Trump was sending out these groups of his minions to go and try to dig up dirt on Joe Biden because he figured he could run against Sanders and Warren. He'll just paint him as socialists, and a big chunk of America will just forget about it. And he's absolutely right. That's the way the numbers are. There's
that was
a 30% ceiling. He knows it. But Biden scared the living daylights out of him. So he sent everybody out trying to dig up crap, and they still can't do it.
They came back with dirt on Trump, and like you said,
right.
Gal Luft, they went out to interview him, and then they find out, hey, dude, you're lying to us. We're gonna indict you. And like you said with Comer, Comer's out here saying they indicted our guy because he's squealing. It's like, no, he's squealing because he's been indicted and he's looking for a way out. And you're his patsy
and also,
now.
His money was predicated on bringing down Joe Biden. Again, look at the Trump methodology. The Trump methodology is based on the Comey, the Comey press conference about Hillary Clinton. Mm-hmm. The idea that you don't even need the evidence. I don't even need you to find that there's classified stuff in the emails of Hillary Clinton, and I don't need to know, like she's been selling. I just need the stink of it, and that'll be enough to get me over the line.
Yeah.
And so that's what he sought from Zelensky, and that's what Gal Luft was supposed to deliver. Just create the stink. Just make this deal. And we'll use the idea that the deal, by the way, that never happened, is enough to go. He was trying to do business with the Chinese. Meanwhile, Trump kills TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was designed to stop Chinese hegemony in manufacturing and their slave labor push that was overwhelming Vietnam, Japan, Taiwan, even Australia, India. And he shut that down, and magically his bank account in China, which had no money in it for the longest time, suddenly had $17 million in it, and he took 15 out that night.
And he had to pay taxes in China that he never paid here.
That's right. Because of that, he paid taxes on the bribe they gave him to kill TPP.
Yeah. No, exactly. No, it's
Well, it's stunning.
It's making Hal's head hurt.
It hurts.
It's so dumb it hurts.
Yeah.
It's so dumb. And it's so obvious. And sometimes you just, I do have a wish I could I wish I was doing my show in DC, because I'd be Kanye Westing the mic out of everybody's hand during these press conferences and these situations, just going, I'm going to let you finish, but can I just point out that Donald Trump paid for the trip to get the information from the guy that actually made it reveal in this. By the way, the lie that you brought up, part of what it made them dig into once they realized he was lying.
Yeah.
Because they were like, wait a minute, we know this guy is lying to us. They looked into him deeper, and then that's how they found the emails where he got James Woolsey, who was a foreign advisor to the Trump campaign going into 2016, who was right there during the transition when all the magic Russian phones were all around, right? Remember when they spied on my campaign because somebody noticed all the Russian phones that were suddenly showing up on White House grounds. Okay, Woolsey, this guy, Gal Luft, and his other co-conspirator wrote a column for China Daily that put words in Woolsey's mouth and essentially said that the administration is going to be favorable to China in terms of trade and that kind of stuff, which is exactly what happened in terms of the deal, by the way. What they said in that article actually played out in what Trump would ultimately give China in their deal. And it intended to go even further with it because they were going to, the idea was China helps them get this far. They will help, with the promise of phase 2 and phase 3, they'll have a reason to keep him and get him reelected. And Russia will help him because he'll let them have Ukraine.
Yeah.
This was Trump's strategy, was to hand over chunks of Ukrainian territory and U.S. farmland to our enemies in exchange for power and money. Look at the guy. Look at how he talks. He tells you that's what he's about. Yeah. It's not even like he's Jimmy Carter and we've all found out that, oh my God, behind the scenes, that old Phil Hartmann gag about Reagan being doddering, and then every time somebody leaves the room, he's sharp as a tack. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as they realize, get him out of here, I'm sick of this stuff. And it just drives you crazy. Like he's what it says on the tin. Trump is exactly who he says he is. He's a serial sexual assaulter and an economic fraud who seeks money and power. And he's one of the New York elites that the Republicans apparently are railing against these days.
Yeah.
He used to pride himself on being that.
Yeah.
What the ever-loving... How do you dilute yourself that much?
They've gone through the looking glass.
Yes.
And
are drag queens really that scary? Is that where we are? Is it just like these people will believe anything? Because, yikes, RuPaul's Drag Race is on reruns. That's what it is. I blame RuPaul's Drag Race. Driven these people
Everything
crazy.
goes back to RuPaul.
No, I mean it's all drag queens' faults. I mean, like the whole and I am convinced that Republicans don't understand the difference between a trans person and a drag queen, and that's why they're going after drag queens these days.
Right. Well, they again, they will use stuff that I've often said that you can criticize. If you're criticizing Rachel Dolezal, that has nothing to do with black people. If you don't remember, Rachel Dolezal is a woman who pretended to be black and ran the NAACP chapter in Seattle.
Yes.
Any problem you have with her has nothing to do with black people. And it's not black people's fault. That has nothing to do with it. So, detransitioners or people who try to manipulate their children or anybody who's trending their kid or any of the worries that they might have about social contagion, have those, but understand they have nothing to do with trans people. Real trans people going through real stuff is a real thing, and those people deserve rights and dignity and support. Just because other elements of society jump into this, and I'll give an analogy they can understand. These people are for every possible gun you could possibly have in your house. Yep. Weapons of war with enough bullets to kill everybody in the neighborhood 6 times over. Mm-hmm. And they can understand, most gun owners, most logical ones, can understand that felons that have guns or ghost guns or 3D printed guns, bad. 60-round magazines, bad. There's a bunch of people can understand that has nothing to do with your standard Second Amendment rights.
Yes.
They can make that separation. So all of these concerns about forcible medical transition, all this stuff they're making up, even at their highest complaint level, has nothing to do with truly trans people. It is a secondary social effect, and if you can't separate the two, then I can't trust you to deal with a complex issue. That's the issue. If you can't understand that you have to protect real people with a real situation because you're worried about people who are dough-headed and socially susceptible to contagion, that's how we get the drug war. That's how we get, this idea that women shouldn't have the right to choose because you have this idea that your ex-girlfriend wanted an abortion at 8 months and 28 days, which is garbage. You can't define real people's situations and adult decisions based on your fantasy about the worst case scenario. And that's all they do now. That's all they have. That's all that's there.
That was a Supreme Court decision that we had, what was it, 3 weeks ago now with the 303 Creative. She alleged that she was going to have to, this woman thought that she was
the website.
So special that she would have to be, gays would be coming out of the woodworks to force this woman in Colorado to design them one of her, WordPress websites.
Well, let's also be completely that all the backstory of that thing was concocted and was false. Yeah. So even the predicate argument that she was putting forward was based on a lie she was aware of. So any argument she makes is from a liar's point of view. So I can't put any weight in it. I will say that they set this up because they knew how it was going to go. Mm-hmm. They knew they could get a ruling like this from almost any court because it's what I would call in the Supreme Court the bridge theory, that if there's a bridge everyone has to use, then everyone should have the rights to use it. If you have a marginal use bridge, say a pedestrian bridge, somebody in a car does not have the right to use the pedestrian bridge, even though everybody has the right to cross the bridge. If there's no bridge at all, the bridge is in your head, in the case of a designer, nobody has to cross that bridge, and it can force you to let somebody cross that bridge. So they're always going to rule that any creative endeavor does not have to, you don't have to put your creative thought into something you don't want to do creatively, which is fine because ultimately that keeps us from Nazi propaganda being forced on writers at studios in some dystopian future where they take over the government. You can't legally force someone to write something or design something they're against. That said, and the society has moved on where you can get a web designer that's in Spain to do it for you. So there was no crucial point. But they thought this would be a linchpin for future cases and expand from it. The problem is, even in this ruling, which was garbage and based on garbage and whatever, it still narrowly defines it based on the bridge theory. That once we get back to everybody has to cross this bridge, so everybody should have the right to cross this bridge, that whole case becomes irrelevant. And we get back to gay people should have the same rights and privileges as everybody else has as a U.S. citizen. when they for anything crucial to life. Period. End of story. Just like everybody else does. And the rest of life, you're on your own, just like everybody else is.
Yep. And there are cases that they're trying to put forward right now to expand on this. I've already heard of 3 cases. It'll be interesting to see how far those go, and if the Supreme Court even agrees to take them up.
I don't think so. I think that's where it'll die, and ultimately that will be the defense. You'll see that, and we'll see that play out more and more. Is the full use bridge, the partial use bridge, and the no bridge concept is legally where they're going with the Constitution, and that's the problem with anti-gay rights and anti-women's rights groups, is that they are trying to attack the bridge that everyone uses.
Yeah,
and that's the big thing they're up against, and they're really they've got one choice, and that's to blow up the bridge entirely. And that's why you'll see like abortion rights are around that area. Just blow up everybody's rights entirely, and or gay rights in general across the country. It's not going to work. But that's what they're shooting for, and that's sad because that's un-American. I mean, to use an overused phrase from the 1950s, but that's what it is. It is antithetical to the concept of America. If you want to live in a religious state, knock yourself out. But
100%.
nope, not here.
Nope.